apparently am I getting Korean food after this? Okay, then I'll do better. I'll do better. I love Korean barbecue. We can try it. Okay. Just checking. Well, just to help with Melt and Anita as they land, we're going to begin. Why don't you turn to the Book of Mormon? Should I preach from that book?
I've not did it before.
Oh, yes, we won't do that. I think the last time I was here, I've seen Jimmy in Calgary, but the last time I was here would have been, I think, summer 2021. That's my hunch. So that would be 3 and a bit years. So it's been a while, and I'll kind of take you a bit on a journey with me today, a little bit why. But I'm hoping that I can sort of help connect some dots for you in terms of just a journey. I'm going to talk today on God will not give us more than we can handle, and other lies that I love. So that's where we're going today. I don't know if they do it here in Surrey, but when I grew up in Edmonton, and in 6th grade, about 12 years old, 11 years old, you go on this end of the year trip for 3 days to Jasper, Alberta, the town that burnt to the ground this summer, for those of you that are following that. And so we would look forward to it all year. I don't know, what age is it here? The schools that they do that probably go sailing in Victoria or something, but we went to the wilderness and I look forward to it all year. And to know how much I look forward to all year, I have to kind of paint for you my bedroom. So my bedroom was a wilderness bedroom. I had deer antlers, birds' wings, and birds' nests, and beaver pellets, and rabbit pellets, and rabbit feet, and my room was just covered. In fact, my dream job was to be a taxidermist. I thought that would be the coolest job. Somebody the other day I was telling, and they said, "So you want to be a serial killer?" I didn't really think of it that way. And so the wilderness was just just something that captured me as a boy. And so we're going to go on this trip, and I have a perch. Do you know what a perch is? Stuffed perch. I had a stuffed perch that was kind of this is the trophy of my room. My adult eyes now, when I was an adult and I pulled it out of a box that I had stuffed, I was like, oh, it's so tiny. But as a 12-year-old, I thought it was a big fish. And I thought, at that age, I need a bigger trophy. And that trophy would be a set of elk antlers. So we're going on this trip to Jasper, and I'm thinking, I'm going to find my elk antlers. So we arrive, busload of kids, picture a whole 50 kids. We're all getting settled in our cabins, unrolling our sleeping bags, getting all set before dinner. I barely put my sleeping bag down and I'm gone into the woods. And it's just so attractive and pulling me in, and I'm walking and the forest is just exciting, and I'm walking and I'm looking for antlers, and I can hear the kids in the background playing, and then the next thing I know, I hear nothing. And I realize I've been walking for an hour, and I have no idea where I am. And so it hits me in that moment, I am lost. Which way is the cabins? Which I had no idea. And then I remembered briefly for a moment, while my heart is bracing and anxiety is building, that in a wilderness course I'd taken in 5th grade, that people will go a little bit veer left or right based on whether they're left-handed or right-handed. So when you face a tree, if you're left-handed, you'll find you'll eventually go that way. If you're right-handed, you'll eventually. So I thought, okay, I don't have any tracks to follow. It's not winter, and so I'll just try to go a little more right. And I'm walking and I'm walking. I don't want to stop, and you know why I don't want to stop? Because I don't want to catch up to my full feelings. I'm in panic mode. I'm lost. I gave up my pursuit of the elk. antlers and just try to find my way home before dark. And I eventually poke out and hear the sounds of other kids, and I have that moment, and I get there and I can tell, whoa, the teacher's already beginning to create a search party. They're like, oh, okay, they knew I was missing. But it was such an overwhelming feeling to feel lost and alone and disoriented. It was the first time I can remember feeling that, but it was not the last. And it was certainly not the only time. Recently, in my life, I was there again. Now, I don't know about you, but in my top 5 things I fear the most, it's being alone, being isolated, being disoriented. And so, when I get anywhere near that edge, I run from that edge. I don't know what you do, but I try to find my way away from that edge. And so for me, I thought, as I stepped into this recent season, I thought, no, not again. How do I end up here again? So what got me into that place of dark, disoriented, and aloneness? I'm going to give you a little bit of a picture because some of us might be in a similar picture related to some of these things. As you kind of look at the hot buttons in society, there's some pretty big hot buttons. If you're in leadership of any kind, business, school, ministry, it's a hard time to be a leader right now because there's so much polarization over so many issues. Of course, the first one was COVID. I remember putting out emails to our 200 employees. This is what we need to do because this is what the government says, and I get 50 emails back telling me, I'm like, I'm not the government. I may not believe this, but I have to tell you what we have to do, and I get shot. I'm sure anybody in leadership understood this and knows this. Then we have the war between Israel and Palestine that just won't end and won't find any peace. And if you're at all paying attention to it or all have any connection to it, it's absolutely overwhelming. Is it not? Then you've got the racism and colonialism going on. And it's, how do we live in that? Where do we land on that conversation? Then you have climate change and then the environmental sustainability that won't stop. Then you have the war of misinformation and the war of disinformation. What's false and what's intended to be false to mislead. I remember asking my IT, we have an IT company that works with we have about 6 companies that I work for. And I said to the IT, the head of it, I said, how are we going to know what's real on the internet now for the next 10 years? And he goes, that is the question of the next decade. What is real? And so I have this as my backdrop, as probably you did. Heavy stuff, is it not? Heavier than I can remember as a leader in my entire life. And so you've got this going. Then you've got the spiritual leadership issues on top of it. You've got the human sexuality conversation. People landing on different sides. You have the young earth and old earth conversation. You have Christian nationalism and Christian pluralism. Again, dividing people. Then you have faith and science and sovereignty and free will. And so it's just weighty. And so I'm living in that, you as are you, finding it starting to get heavy and heavy and heavy, and then we have a family situation that ends up in a crisis in our family that just overwhelms me. And my knees buckle and I can't get out from under it. You ever had your knees buckle? The weight of bad news, the weight of difficulty, the combination of several things, and you just can't get up off the mat. Ever been there? You're supposed to bounce up and you're supposed to sort of somehow feel like the Spirit's in you, and so I should be able to just encourage myself out of this, but I can't get off the mat. Been there? I think we've all been there, we're just not allowed to say it. We don't like it because it feels vulnerable, feels too transparent. And so I found my knees buckling. Our hearts were broken. Marianne and I's hearts were broken. It's 2 years ago now. And I just found the weight of it just knocked me to the mat. And I couldn't function, couldn't go to work, couldn't find the strength to get up off the mat. So what do we do in these dark places where we feel alone and isolated and disoriented? In fact, I would say society is largely disoriented, the entire society right now. Well, I think this is what happens to those of us who have a faith in Jesus. Well, if God isn't fair, because we figured out he ain't fair, right? You've figured that out, right? Then how do I protect myself from unfairness? From resentment, from bitterness? Why are you blessing them and I don't get blessed like that? Where is God in my pain and my despair? Where are you in this? Like, come on. Like, if you don't get mad at God, you're not really dealing with him. Because if you're really walking with God, you're going to get pissed and mad at him because he doesn't play by your rules or my rules. Doesn't turn everything, the question is, doesn't he turn everything to good this side? Like before I die, won't justice come? Won't it all be turned to good? This side of heaven. Live long enough to go, no. What do you do when bad things happen to good people? And worse for most of us, when good things happen to people that seem undeserving. Are you kidding me? They got that? They're an awful parent. They're an awful human. And they what? Come on, don't tell me you don't live here. These are all, I'm just giving you our inside voices that we don't say outside. I'm giving you permission to go, oh, I'm not the only one that thinks like that. How do we hang on through disorientation and pain? How do you hang on? And so those are the questions in my isolation, my disorientation the last 2 years that I've been deeply wrestling with. And it's very painful. And you've likely heard the statement, God won't give you more than you can handle. How many have heard it? How many believed it? I think most of us have believed it. That's right, God won't give us more than we can handle. He'll be there. I'm here to tell you, totally he'll give you more than you can handle. Totally. And I'm going to prove it to you. So the context of 1 Corinthians, or 2 Corinthians 1, is Paul is speaking to the church in Corinth, and they're going through difficult times, and he is trying to address them by saying, I get that you're going through hard times, but as you go through hard times, you're going to meet other people that go through hard times, and so you're going to be able to help them. And hard times are things that happen to all of us. I'm giving you the Todd message version of the beginning of 2 Corinthians 1. And so there's going to be good things that happen, enjoy them. There's going to be bad things that happen, endure them. This is kind of how it's going to work. Be happy when you can and hang on when you can't. And then he comes to this place in describing himself as we get to verse 8. So we don't want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we're experiencing in the province of Asia. We're under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure. What does far beyond our ability to endure mean? It means far beyond our ability to endure. It means beyond our ability, our strength, it's more than we can handle. So that we, I'm going to use this word, despaired of life itself. How many of you experienced despair? I had not until the last 2 years. I made it to 58 before I knew the feeling of despair. How far did you make it? to 58, and then I went, oh, this is an awful feeling. This is like a cliff edge feeling. I'm white knuckling it at that point in my despair. Indeed, we felt that we received the sentence of death, but this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. This happened so that you can understand God. God ordered it, controlled it. It's in the happening, you get the chance to hang on to God. Put your knuckles in his cliff, so to speak. And then he says this further into Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 11 now. And here he's kind of leading up to, there's these super apostles that are well-spoken, eloquent, speaking a different message. Paul's like, hey, I'm not a great speaker. I'm a little short, bald guy, some would argue. And you're not listening to me, you're listening to the eloquent big apostles, super apostles. And I just want to get your attention. The super apostles are holding you because they're trying to say you get all of these things if you follow God. And I'm going to tell you what you get if you follow God. Here's my badge of being an apostle, Paul says. So now we come into we're at verse 23. I've worked much harder, Paul says. Been in prison more frequently. Been flogged more severely. Been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews 40 slashes -1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a day and a night in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. Didn't have a home. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger from city, in danger from country, in danger from sea, in danger from false believers. He lived in a lot of danger. Got that? I labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I've been cold and I've been naked. That's my badge for following Jesus. Where does that fit in the super apostle conversation? Doesn't. He's trying to say that's not an indicator of God's blessing, or the indicator of God's blessing is you're going to get some hard times. And most of us aren't ready for that. We don't have a good theology of blessing and a good theology of suffering. We often have a good theology of blessing and hope we can avoid suffering. Or that God will kind of pop us out of it. And so we're often not ready for it. I think it leads us to this question. What does it mean to trust God? That's been my issue in this 2 years. What am I trusting him for? That I'll get a free out of jail card like Monopoly? If I could just land on the right square, I'll escape? That things will always get better? How many have a loose end in their life where it's not getting better? Don't like those. Don't like loose ends. I like nice bows. That'll always work out, that we'll have a Hallmark ending. How many like Hallmark movies? If you do, it's because you like the endings. Because they always end, or a Steven Spielberg movie, they always end good. Paul's trying to say, they don't always end good, and they're not often good in the middle. Remember when Paul went to Rome? He thought he would go to Rome. He didn't think he'd go as a prisoner, and they were begging him, don't go. And he's like, don't do this to me. I know I have to go. The Spirit's calling me to go. Don't make it harder on me than it is. Well, no, they're trying to say, don't go into hardship. Who would go into hardship on purpose? Ask Melton and Anita that. Who would go into hardship on purpose? Were you in Canada, here in Canada when your home burned, or were you still there?
I was at the hut and he was back.
So you were already on your way to Yellowknife, or you were already in Yellowknife. So picture this, Melton and Anita are moving across the world from pastoring in the vineyard in South Africa to living in Yellowknife. How many of you have been to Yellowknife? It's dark there. It's cold there. Snow is attractive for about a year. if you've never seen snow. But they're there, they're gonna move across the world, and their house burns down and they lose everything they own. And they still come. And they spend 6 years up there with no home to go back to. Now they come here with still no home to go back to, and now they're gonna move from the snow to the rain. Do you not think that's costing them? Who does that? Who walks into hardship like that unless there's a pull of the Spirit? Nobody does. We're all looking for her blessing, not for suffering. And so we have to figure out how and why we trust God. What are we trusting Him for? That will avoid pain and loss? The bad things won't happen to His people? The hockey world recently experienced a profound loss. If you follow hockey at all, the NHL. Actually, you might even have to follow hockey to know this story. But Johnny Gaudreau was recently killed, him and his brother, by a drunk driver. He played in Calgary for 8 years, so of course that city was totally mourning. Marianne and I had the chance to go down to the memorial. There's hundreds and hundreds of people left, hockey sticks and sweaters and pictures and Gatorade bottles because he drank a specific kind, and just as far as the eye could see, the stairs to the Coliseum. And I kept asking myself, why is there such solidarity around something like this? What has made people that probably have nothing to do with hockey come together around this? And here's my conclusion. Because I think deep down we feel that the successful, the cream of the crop, the people that rise above and get their dreams and make it to the top of whatever it is, are somehow will avoid tragedy, will somehow be above it. And so when it happens to them, we're rattled to the core. This is all at a subconscious level, I think. Because it's unjust pain, it's unjust tragedy, and we're going, wow, even they aren't exempt. Or a Christian leader, people are unnerved that Todd just had a knockout. Like, oh, I thought it was supposed to be a life of blessing. What happened? And so we kind of have this weird connection to success and suffering and blessing and suffering. And I think we have to get it clear in our minds, or we shipwreck our faith. Because we can't hang on, we can't white knuckle it through the hard times. It was similar when Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash. The world mourned out. I've been in the Philippines where all the kids are Kobe Bryant. When you go in the slums and they're playing basketball, they all are Kobe Bryant. And they all have his jersey. And so it's a worldwide thing. And then he dies senselessly in a helicopter crash with his daughter in a helicopter. And you're like, even he's not exempt. So what are we trusting God for? It's simple and it's profound, and it's still probably the hardest thing. We're trusting that He will be with us. Even when we can't feel it and know it. In this last experience for me, where I was in the dark, couldn't, my friend Art Ray, I talked to David and we realized we both know Art Ray, pastor of the Cambridge Vineyard for many years and lives in Calgary now. And Art would take me for drives every week. I couldn't function, I couldn't go to work. And he'd say, what's God saying to you? I'd like, Art, I don't know. I have no clue. It's dark, Art, it's dark, there's no light. I can't see, I can't hear. And yet, I had some sense that God was with me. And here's what I would do every day. Marianne knows this because she was literally the one that kept me from falling off the cliff. Is I'd wake up every morning and I'd pray this simple prayer. Lord, I need need a strength greater than my own, or I won't make it. Next morning, I need a strength greater than my own, or I won't make it. And I think we hope that we don't get near that edge if I've been following Jesus for 45 years. You would think by now I wouldn't have to go to that edge. Would you? I didn't think so. I'm like, well, what is this, a trick? Is this how you mature me? I'll stay immature. So Paul says this. He says this in back into 2 Corinthians 12. So after the super apostle conversation, he says this. But Christ said this to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast about all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why for Christ's sake I delight in weakness. In insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. That's very poetic. It's lovely. It's beautiful. It sucks to live. Right? It's an awful. Who wants to be weak? Who wants to be vulnerable? And probably that was the word I would say I felt most. How do you feel in those 2 years? Vulnerable. Extremely vulnerable. And then you go to doctors and they don't get that you're vulnerable and you're advocating for yourself. And they can't get inside your skin of feeling how vulnerable you feel. And your friends really can't do that, but you feel it, but they're trying. Everybody's trying. And so Paul says, when I am weak, then I am strong. That's the upside down kingdom. It's a kingdom I don't like. And so it's important that if we do not have a theology of suffering that matches our theology of blessing, we will likely shipwreck our faith. We'll likely at some point ditch it. Because you can't navigate the hardships of life that will come without it. Or you'll somehow put guilt and shame. Maybe it's me, I didn't do enough. Maybe God's holding me accountable for some bad thing I did 30 years ago. Or we'll fall into a guilt and shame cycle. Or shipwreck our faith if we don't understand this. And so I think it's important that we understand that we need a strength that's greater than our own. That in our weakness, He is made strong. So much of our lives, my life, is designed around my need to avoid trusting God. Right? We sing the songs, we trust you, we trust you. We don't. Come on, we don't. Really, we don't. We're not totally convinced He's trustworthy. He's let us down because we had an idea of how it should go. It didn't go that way. Do we let go of our idea of how it should go, or we go, I'm mad at you. You didn't do it my way. We're not totally convinced He won't protect us from hurt and pain. How many parents see that, have had that child, and I have a story I'll tell you in a moment, a child that's going to run out on the street and they're want to scream, but the child's too far away, they can't do anything about it. Right? Now picture that as a God moment. Well, but God's all powerful. But he restrains His power by His love, which is, again, the upside down kingdom that makes us like, come on, just take control and charge of everything. Micromanage the world already. Just not me. Micromanage everyone else. We're not totally convinced He won't keep us from unjust tragedy. And unjust tragedy will happen. The ratio of this people in this room is going to be unjust tragedy that happens to some of us. And that's why we're together. We can't do this alone, because we have to hold each other. If you think of the carousel, when you go to the fair, there's a carousel with the different horses or animals that go up and down, kids ride them, you go in circles till you throw up. There's some up and some down, and that's why we have communities, some up, some down. When we're up, we hold each other's. When we're down, we hold on to each other. And it ebbs and flows. Some of us are down a lot longer than we want. Others of us get to be up for a lot. I don't know about you, but I had an idea that if I followed Jesus, I surrendered everything, and I went for him fully, that my life would ascend. I'd have a few bumps, but ultimately it would go like that. Maybe, but it's gonna, 45 years of following Jesus doesn't do that. But I'm still following. Because that's, again, something I had to let go of. My wanting to control the story, the narrative. And so, we have to understand that our trust issues are real. Our lack of trust issues, if I could say it that way. Our focus, I think, exposes our lack of trust issues, if I could say it that way. We spend a lot of our lives reaching for financial independence. Do we not? I work in a business. I work in a business where we're spending our lives trying to get enough money to be independent. Is that really the goal? Is that really what we should be doing? We spend a lot of our lives reaching for control and avoiding loss and pain. Is it not? I hate pain. Not an Enneagram 7, but I hate pain. Enneagram 7s don't like pain. And so I will do what I can to avoid it. And for me, it was, if I can make enough right, good choices, I'll avoid it. Bad news. Doesn't work. We spend a lot of our lives planning and organizing to keep from feeling lost. I can just know where I'm going, know what the plan is, know what we're doing next, tick some boxes. That'll help me internally to not feel lost, because I hate feeling lost. But I don't know how many of us have dug that deep to go, that's what we're doing when we do that. We just know we're trying to get rid of a feeling inside we don't like by organizing and planning. And I'm not saying any of that is wrong. None of what I'm saying is wrong. I'm just saying where it lands internally. We spend a lot of our lives looking for safety, as we're not convinced God will keep us safe. L.R. Nost said this, and I'll close with this. Life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and the awful, it's ordinary and mundane and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living. Heartbreaking, soul healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. And so the ebb and flow of suffering and blessing in life can feel as random as hitting the shuffle on Spotify or Apple Music, shifting unpredictably between amazing, mundane, and awful. Actually, can all happen in the same day or minute. And sometimes it can feel like it's completely out of control. If you're like me, you don't like feeling out of control. If you're human, you don't like feeling out of control. So you're like me. And in those moments, we often can't understand why God won't do something about it. David Roos, who's the National Director for Vineyard Canada, recently wrote a post about the story, if you know the story of the footprints in the sand, where you think of Jesus, where were you? And look back and know there's one set of footprints. Why? Because I'm carrying you. That's why there's only one footprint. But David's saying, you look back and there's no footprints. Because they got washed away. Now what? Well, my recent story, which I'll give you in a second, there was no footprints in the sand. I'm like, you're not carrying me. And I'm not carrying me. So how are we getting through this? And so it's important that we understand God's invitations to trust him with what? To trust him that he's there even when we don't know it. Jacob said this, Genesis 28:16. Jacob had wrestled all night with God. Couldn't, and God had hit him in the hip, if you know the story. Walked with a limp, so to speak. And he said this that morning, surely the Lord is in this place. And I did not know it. 2 years of darkness for me. Surely the Lord is in this place. And I did not know it. It was too dark. Couldn't see it. Couldn't see him. So what was my story? My story was a story of mental health. I've never, until 7-8 years ago, run into depression. Never happened. It's in my family. It's not, I've never experienced it. So 8 years ago, I guess it was, 7-8 years ago, I had a collision with it, with some huge physical symptoms that put me out for about 8 months until I found a med that worked. First got rid of the physical, internal stuff, intestinal stuff, and then was able to find a med. 5 years later, I went to my doctor and I said, I'm doing good. Do I have to still be on a med? He said, well, maybe the rest of your life. But I said, what if, well, I don't want to be on a med if I don't have to. And he said, well, you can try it, you can go off. You don't have to, but you can go off it if you want. We'll do it over 6 months. I said, well, how do I know if it works? He says, you have about a year. And within that year, if you make it to a year, feeling pretty much the same as you have the last 5, then you're good to go. Went off it over 6 months. I was off it by July 2021. We had some events happen in our family. Things got to January and Marianne's like, I think you should go to a counselor. You seem a little rocky again. And we get to June and we have this family crisis that just pushes me over the edge. And I'm like, I don't have what it takes to withstand that storm. So I go back to my doctor immediately. Can you get me back on that thing? I need it now. It was actually a year, right up on the year. And we tried 4 different meds. We went back on the same med, by then it didn't work, which is not uncommon once you go off. And then it took me 18 months, 4 tries, 3 months a try to find the right med. We found a psychiatrist that seemed to understand it, seemed to say, Todd, all the trauma work you've done is awesome, all the psychology work you've done is awesome, but you won't see the fruit of it until we deal with the biological issue. You've got to get the right med to balance your chemicals. I'm like, am I that guy? I don't want to be that guy. People with diabetes, do they want to be that person that has to take insulin? People with thyroid issues, do they want to be that person that has to take a pill every day? But somehow when it comes to the brain and the mind, we go, well, that's different. It's just in your head. That is in my head. It's chemicals in my head. No, but it's real. I never knew despair like that, ever, because of a chemical imbalance. So my encouragement to you is don't diminish that. So the psychiatrist said, Todd, you've had 2 episodes in your life, major depressive episodes. They happen to happen in your 50s. I'm now 60, thinking it's behind me. But my doctor said, you got to stay on that med now, probably for life. Or you risk falling in a ditch again. So I want to say to you just to both what we just said and then practically I want to open up the conversation around mental health. It's very real and it's very prevalent and we need to trust that people are okay to pursue both healing from God and medicine, whether it's natural or whatever way you want to go. So where do we go from here, Lord? Maybe before we do that, just give me a moment, if you could, or what's hitting you? What are you hearing? What's sticking out to you? You can just sort of shout it out in a word, sentence, or thought.
It's okay to feel overwhelmed.
It's okay to feel overwhelmed. If you got that, you got it. What else did you hear?
you're not crazy.
You heard you're not crazy.
You're not crazy.
That's
Mental health
awesome.
issues, you're not crazy.
They're not crazy. What else did you hear? Life sucks. Well, that's a hopeful message, Todd. Thanks for coming. What did you learn today? Life sucks. I should go to church every day. It's very true. Life does suck.
Help comes in different ways.
Help comes in different ways. That's awesome. You synthesized that. That was awesome.
I heard that it's time for the church to begin the conversation.
Time for the church to begin the conversation. Yes.
When you're in the dark spot, he's there even if you can't feel him.
When you're in the dark, he's there even when you can't feel him or hear him, when you think he's banning you. It's a hard one. If that's what you're trusting for.
I hear the question in my head of, is it really God that I'm after, or am I looking for something else?
Ooh, you went nice and deep. Nice. Am I just looking for another pill to make my life better? Then I'm really after God. Yeah, maybe I'll go to church because somehow it'll make me successful. Yeah. Anybody else?
The church spends most of its energy in the shallow things, looking to not experience pain, but this is about as real of a gospel as we're going to hear right here.
Yeah. It's as real as we're going to hear, and we spend a lot of time trying to avoid pain.
Yeah.
Some might say what I just did is I gave you a root canal and never gave you freezing. A little too much truth in the room today. But sometimes we have to realize what I'm trying to do is normalize what happens in life that we kind of put underground or think something about guilt and shame in us that this is happening. I'm trying to surface it and let it move off of us.
Can I ask a question that where does it fit where Paul says whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, set your mind on such things? Like, how do you marry that with like embracing pain and suffering as well?
Yeah, I think you do. Because I was faced with all that. Todd, just be grateful. Say 3 grateful things every day. I'm like, okay, try. But when if you've known mental health, what I'm talking about mental health, not the just regular having a bad day.
Right.
It doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
You have to first stabilize that, establish that, and then you can move forward into it. So you have to kind of go through it. So I think in context, yes, ultimately, but there's a process to get there. I'm terribly grateful today. Marianne says to me now, every day's a gift now, because I didn't know if I was going to get you back. Every day's a gift now. So we've come out the other side with incredible gratefulness, not knowing if we were coming out the other side. Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just have to carry people to the end. Right? There's some things that don't get fixed this side of heaven. That's hard. But if we know that, then we can carry each other together. I don't know if that helps with that. Didn't probably give the answer you want to hear, but
Well, so no, not yet.
yeah. So Lord, I ask that you would meet us in that place where we feel guilt or shame, or somehow we've impeded the blessings in our life, or resentment or bitterness or jealousy hits us because we're not blessed like those we think around us are. Lord, would you help us to see that your will isn't being done everywhere on earth. That's why we pray, your will be done. It isn't being done. And so this gap between what you long for and what is real. And we live in that reality. And yet you carry us. And so would you help us to see you in the dark.